to our movie of the day.
Or should we talk briefly about Blade Runner 2049?
Oh yeah,
we did see that recently.
The movie we saw in the theater.
Yeah,
come on, yeah. We gotta let the people know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. Like, I was never really enamored with the first one myself. Anyway, I felt it to be a little slow. Mm-hmm. I know some people might, get outraged for that because I know it's kind of a cult classic. Right?
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, definitely a cool premise for when it came out.
Yeah.
And the special effects were pretty good for when it came out, and the special effects this time are awesome. I mean, I do love the world they're in, just kind of the dark, dreary, mechanistic world. The advertisements, kind of like they had in. Like Minority Report. Mm-hmm. I thought that was similar. Like, the projections of holograms and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So all that's cool. But that being said, though, I don't know, kind of slow. And also, too, it's like I didn't really understand the replicant is going out there to find this, and she doesn't want it out there, but she's letting, the police captain. I mean, didn't it seem like she didn't want it out there, but she's letting him go discover all these things that might be damaging to that? I don't know.
Well, they had competing interests in the movie.
Yeah.
And again, you wonder, like, is it really that big of... Somebody else, is it really that big of a deal if they find out that, like, again, the big problem, I guess, the movie, and I guess we're spoiling it a little, but the whole idea is, like, can replicants reproduce? But is that, like, a huge issue? I don't know. They're already, like, looking like people. Right. Does it matter if they make new pseudo-people? Anyway, but his boss's point of view is that once she finds out that a potential, like, replicant is given birth, she wants everything to do with that just wiped out. So his going out to discover stuff is supposed to be only so that he can kill everything involved, like kill the child, kill anybody who is connected with it, and just remove the records. Right. Of course, what she doesn't know is that he's starting to develop kind of...
I guess that's where I'm coming from, is that in that world with they're constantly monitoring him, and they can see what he's doing and all that. I mean, wouldn't you think she'd be keeping a closer eye on him?
Yeah.
It didn't seem like...
I guess they'd sort of established that he'd had a previous track record of always, he'd come back, they do those after each mission, they do those evaluations to make sure and then at one point she does question, are you saying no to me? And he says, I wasn't aware that was an option. So it suggests that, his programming is that he's going to do this, even if he somehow feels conflicted. But then on the other side, you've got the industrial, whatever, tycoon / president, whatever he is, who he wants to get that child because he wants them to be able to, if they can procreate, he can make slaves faster and through the natural way. I don't know. It got kind of convoluted. And then they had this whole thing of like trying to make you believe that he is the son of Harrison Ford and Shaun White, again, whatever the characters were, Deckard and whoever. But again, it's like you should probably suspect that he's not really the son because they make it so obvious. But at one point they suggest maybe there's another child. So I thought that was an interesting way that they sort of surprised me when they revealed who the child really was. And it's just it's just a little too long. I thought the score, they were imitating the score from the first movie, and I'm kind of with you. I like the first movie. I don't know if it certainly did not deserve to have, it's had 7 different versions released over the years. It didn't deserve that. Like maybe you're like, oh, we wish we hadn't put out that first version with the voiceover, so let's do a version with no voiceover. But that's it. Do one more, director's cut, whatever you want to call it. Don't do 5 more after that, which they did. They just kept repackaging it over the years. So it's an okay movie. It was a solid sci-fi noir. I'd call this solid sci-fi noir, but it's not going to make my top 10 list or anything. So in that respect, I consider it a little bit of a failure that they took this long to come back with a sequel, and they didn't really blow me away with it. And in fact, they tried to blow me away with the score that was blowing out the speakers at friggin' Grabway.
Yeah, even that, they had a blown speaker already. Yeah,
it could be.
That was bad. It was buzzing half the time.
Yeah.
And then a couple of things. So Jared Leto, his character, his eyes.
Yeah.
They didn't ever explain that. So he's got these eyes that look like, are they, synthetic eyes? He's supposedly he's a human, right? Or is he a replicant? They didn't really make that.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
And I mean, he's making the replicant, so you would think he'd be a human. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did mention that the first text they showed right off the bat that he took over or he got someone's assets that had died from the previous movie.
The previous guy, yeah.
So that wasn't really explained.
Yeah, I thought he was blind.
Maybe, yeah. But
But you just thought, yeah, why not tell us that stuff? And honestly, I came away with the movie thinking that it had been totally, finally confirmed that Deckard was himself a replicant.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a thing the next day that said the movie doesn't totally confirm it. I'm like, what? I got that impression. I don't know if you had that impression that.
Yeah, well, it seemed that way because if you're talking about the replicants can breed and have
right,
a child,
yeah.
and he was part of that.
Right.
So
who else was she having sex with?
Yeah,
I mean,
unless the deal is you need a human and a replicant to have a half human, half replicant child.
That's just apparently Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott have been arguing for years. Ridley Scott thought he was definitely a replicant after the first movie. Harrison Ford didn't think he was definitely a human, but he thought it was left ambiguous or whatnot. So frankly, if you come back after this long and you have this long-standing mystery, I don't know what the point is. If you think I didn't think they had extended it any further, because at one point Jared Leto says to him something like the idea was that maybe you just never really fell in love at all. Maybe you and she were programmed to come together. So there's really no in the replicant world, there's no such thing as love. It's just all programming. And he's like, I know what's real.
And was that supposed to be Vegas where he was hiding out, by the way?
I guess so. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Because they had like the Elvis show hologram
exactly.
and like the roulette table and stuff.
Yeah.
But,
apparently they built
a lot of big, huge,
giant
statues.
erotic statues at some point. Like, okay.
And then that's where the bomb went off. Now, was that in the initial movie, or was that something that they just didn't explain either? Because I feel like I don't remember that but it's been so many years since I saw it. That's something else too. They talked about a bomb went off and all the data was erased.
Right. Now, I do think that was something new added to this movie, because that's part of the whole investigation. He's trying to track things down in kind of and it gives them a little bit of leeway to go retro with some of the data things that look like almost like microfiche or something, And did they take VHS tapes? I don't know if those were involved,
I don't think so.
But they talked about having things really backed up primitively and whatnot. So anyway, it's worth seeing, but it's like I said, a little disappointing if you're going to wait this long and come back and and of course at the box office it was just not really it was number one, but it wasn't really a big hit or anything like that. So
to me, there's something to be said about actually, and not to say I always get every plot and but there's something to be said about attempting to explain the plot. I mean, a lot of movies to me just seem like they just like. Mm-hmm. It's lazy. I don't even think they're trying to leave it up to interpretation like David Lynch might in some of his stuff.
Right.
I think it's just like they don't know how to tie it together or run out of time. I mean, a movie that's 2 hours and 49 minutes, something like that, 29?
2 hours and 40 minutes.
2 hours and 40. Don't you think they could explain the couple of things we were talking about?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's just again, I mean, I feel like Ryan Gosling, maybe it's time to stop playing the strong silent type. Like he's done it great in Drive and Place Beyond the Pines or whatever, but we've seen enough of that. Just La La Land was cool. You got to emote and everything, but this one, it's like he doesn't even bring up to Harrison Ford like, are you my daddy? I mean, maybe he doesn't say it that way, but look, dude, I'm a replicant. I've been investigating this thing. I had this memory that seems to connect me to the place where Shaun White died or whatnot, and just like the only thing he can say is like, if you could meet that son today, would you like to meet him? He's like, no. And it's like, oh snap! But then he explains that meeting him would put the child in danger because he could easily be caught and then experimented on and dissected.
And another question: was the dog real? And he even asked him that. He didn't.
Oh yeah, I love that. Ask him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ask him.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, they're not making replicant dogs.
Yeah, so. I never heard of that one before. Yeah. Well, I guess that's part of the problem. Ultimately, is that the movie, like the first one, maybe that was the flaw. Maybe that's why the first one really at the time wasn't a hit. It's just become a cult hit. That they like playing this whole having it both ways thing. And yeah, if you're gonna try to have it both ways, even with the stupid dog. I mean, I know that was probably their joke on the whole idea of what's real or not, but I'd like it to be a little bit more on the nose or whatnot. A couple of people I've heard have complained about the fact that like Jared Leto just disappears, like he's the bad guy, and at the end it's only his henchwoman that is dealt with. He's apparently gonna go on and try to still find new ways to get replicants to reproduce. Maybe they were setting it up for a sequel.
For another one, yeah. I mean, they certainly left the door open.
Could be. But apparently Ryan Gosling is dead. If you were curious about that, they didn't make it 100%. Spoiler alert.
I think people know by now.
Yeah, he's not just. It's not one of those. At least the guy who the screenplay writer said he's not like. They actually played the same theme they played when the Rutger Hauer character died, and it was actually called "Time to Die" in that initial thing. That's the other thing I think maybe you're missing. I think a lot of people, that's a kind of a somewhat boring movie that gets redeemed with some great stuff at the end, especially with Rutger Hauer and his whole speech about about how all these memories are lost in time, like tears in the rain, and then he just doesn't even fight anymore. He saves Harrison Ford. It's really emotional. This one, I don't know, just laying back and dying on the steps. That didn't really get me in the feels or anything.
Yeah.
Oh well, but.